Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the Epic Narrative.
Welcome back once again to the Epic Narrative. Of course, we've got lots of things to do. Why? Because this story goes on and it involves so many people. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. I do know sometimes, here on the Epic Narrative, you hear a different perspective of God and his character and covenant and the plan of God for the promised land. And it's so different than what many have been taught in their churches and all the way from Sunday school. Like I totally remember from last week's episode, I totally remember coloring in, the drawings while the teacher told the story, and Miriam, Aaron's wife, dancing, right? And they were like, and they danced and celebrated how the Lord had rescued them and killed the Egyptians. And when I look back, I know I'm not saying it was a horrible thing, but it just conditions you as a child that God kills, and it should be celebrated. When God kills your enemies, you should celebrate, you should worship, you should, dance and sing to him. And there's something about that that's never addressed. And there's something about teaching that stream without developing critical thinking in the children, without saying, listen, we choose this interpretation of God's character, but there's other ways of looking at things. And giving people that opportunity is something that I love to do here on the Epic Narrative. And I know that even my daughter and my producer who helped me on this, sometimes, they hear me say things and they're not 100% behind it. It's okay. It's okay. I know that sometimes I give people such a radical good God that it's hard to believe. And at some level, we just, in our humanness, because of who we are, we say he can't be all good. Because look at my circumstances, look at what's going on. Or in this case, they were like, look, he killed everybody. How could he not be the killer? It's like, well, because he doesn't. Jesus didn't. And that's what we always go back to. I know that for some of you, that's a lame form of apologetics to keep going back to Jesus. But as somebody myself who has studied apologetics and enjoy it and read it and interact with it. I mean, even now I'm reading a book. I think I mentioned this before too. I'm basically reading two theology books, but it's all contained in one, because one theologian is critiquing the other theologian, and so I get to read both theologians, and it's just good to exercise my brain. And I don't agree with everything they're writing, and I have no doubt that if they heard my podcast, that at least one of them would probably go, into epileptic seizure. Just theologically, they would just start shaking on the ground, because they'd be like, this guy is so wrong. God's a killer, but he's holy and righteous, and on we go. So I appreciate those of you that have been along for the ride. And as always, you have permission not to agree with me. And also you have permission not to argue with me. You can just go with it. I think it's a beautiful way to live with a God who's good all the time. And so far, I haven't found inconsistencies with the way Scripture's written. I do find inconsistency in the way that people present him. And I do find that, we've said it. So, to put it bluntly, sometimes I think Moses gets in his own way. His passion to present God in a way that will help these people, these slaves, finally get their lives together as quickly as possible and accomplish all the things that need to be accomplished. He's trying to do that. He's trying to write this history down for them to rehearse over and over again, so that they behave and don't screw it up for the rest of the world. He feels a ton of pressure, I think, when he's writing this. So I also got to keep in mind that these guys are traveling in a desert. In our travels in our RV, we have been to desert places. And one time, one afternoon, my wife was gonna go to Walmart or whatever, and she goes, "What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "I'm just gonna go into the desert. I just want to go into the desert." I think I mentioned this before on the podcast, and I rode my bike out, down the road for a ways, and I was in the middle of the desert, so to speak. I knew I wasn't technically. I knew the town was like 3 miles away, but I get out, I park my bike, kind of lay it in a little ravine, and I go for a walk. And it is incredibly disorienting in a desert. It all looks the same. Now, I'm sure if I lived in the desert, I would start to see the nuances of the desert, and it probably doesn't all look the same. But for me, it did. And for me, it did. And I was just, Bob's like, "Well, you grew up in the woods." It's true. I grew up in the woods of New England. And I remember as a small child, like, fifth, sixth grade, I could run into the woods, and I was in the woods. Like, it's weird, as a little kid, like my imagination running, I'd be being chased by whatever, or chasing something, or pretending I'm a hunter, or building a small fort, or I'm just doing all this stuff in the woods. I'd spend hours in the woods. And then I always knew my way home. But I have no doubt, because cousins would come over or whatever, I'd take them into the woods. They were incredibly disoriented. All the trees looked the same to them. To me, they looked like, I knew them. I knew they weren't all the same. I knew my trails. I knew that if for some reason I got somewhere where I was lost, I knew how to walk out of the woods. You just walk straight line, find the nearest road, figure it out from there. It wasn't something I was ever afraid of doing. So anyways, I walk into the desert, and it's all looking the same to me. And I thought, I did think of these passages because I was studying them at the time. And I thought, this would be crazy, spend the whole day walking through all this. And I thought of how we have to travel in the RV. Everything has to be packed in such a way that it won't jiggle. It's bizarre. But even the littlest vibration, and against your cabinet door, and when you stop for the night, there's like a groove carved into your cabinet door, or the paint's missing, or the wood, the corner of the wood is gone because the chair had moved out just a little bit. We have to strap the chairs down, strap the couch down, strap the dining room table down. Everything, nothing can move. And if it jiggles, it can't be touching anything else. If it is going to have some variation. So like even in the cabinets, everything has to not, the plates aren't strapped down, but they are on non-skid mats on the thing. And some of these cabinets, we pack them tight. Like I'm thinking of myself of the coffee cabinet. I have to pack it tight, but even so, I know that there's movement because the inside of the cabinet door, you can see it. The cabinet door is definitely, showing the what happens when things rattle around inside the cabinet. So I think of people on this journey, and if they're packing their carts, you don't want things to jiggle. You don't want things to shift. You got to make sure that it's strapped down. When they put things on donkeys, and I think we covered this on the way out of Egypt, but donkeys were the beasts of burden. They are honored in the nation of Israel. They were what kings rode on because of the honor that the nation gave them for the work they did at helping them get out of Egypt. They were exempt from any sort of sacrificial duties. If you had donkeys and you had to sacrifice the firstborn, a lamb was sacrificed in its place because you didn't take out your donkeys. Donkeys were an honored beast of burden. So you'd load up your donkey, you'd strap it down tight because you didn't want anything rattling loose. Because man, you're walking in the desert. It is not easy footing. and donkeys are very sure-footed, but it's still going to rock back and forth. And if it's not strapped down exactly right, eventually that box is going to work loose. And as soon as something works loose, like the whole thing falls apart. The whole thing. It's fascinating. Even in an RV, like occasionally we'd open up a door or there was stuff on the dresser, right? Stuff on the we have a couple things on the dresser that are kind of locked down. But one day it worked itself loose out of the strap, and then everything on the dresser was on the floor. Just boom. And the one thing that was strapped to the wall literally hung. It was hanging off the wall and just banging against. And we were like, oh my goodness. Shower doors. I mean, there's well, they didn't have shower doors. But anyways, you get the picture. Everything had to be strapped down. And then, of course, you got lots of people. You got family. You got flocks. You got mules. All of them need attention to make sure that everybody's ready, to make sure everybody's together. I mean, I watch people in RVs that, have 3, 4, 5 kids, and they're traveling the country, and I say, God bless them. I keeping track of all of their stuff and all of them, and then they, the people are like, yeah, we have 2 dogs. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Now at this current time, we have just purchased a puppy. He's like 11 weeks old. We're going to be with him in this one camping spot for the next couple months, but then we're going to hit the road. And our thought is, man, we got to figure out what to do with all of his stuff. We got to strap all that down, and we have to keep him in line. And then we have to travel. And wherever we travel, we have to make sure that there's a dog park, or, if we stop at a rest area, whereas before it was just the 2 of us, we could just go to a truck stop and, go to the bathroom, pick up something to drink, get back in the truck, and boom, down the road. But now it's going to be like, no, we're going to need to stop. We got to make sure that we named him Zacapa. You can look him up on Instagram. He has his own page. Zacapi makes me happy. Anyways, Zacapa, it's the name of my favorite kind of rum. It's out of Guatemala. Yeah, I was introduced to it. Interestingly enough, I was introduced to it on a missions trip. The last day was the only day that we allowed everyone to go shopping. Our missions trips were actually missions trips, not vacations with an opportunity to take my picture feeding some poor child on the side of the street. Like we worked hard, really hard for, I don't know, I think it was 8 or 9 days. And then with the 10th day, we went to the marketplace. So we went, we were at the marketplace, and everybody was covered, and I was with our interpreter, and he was a great guy. And he and I were just having a blast, and kids were all spread out in their small groups, but all spread out. And he was like, hey, do you want to walk down this place? So I'm walking with him. We went on a tuk-tuk ride. We went on one of those crazy decorated buses. I honestly, it was one of my favorite days of relaxation. It was just a ton of fun. But he introduced me to this type of rum when he found out that I liked rum, which he had to be I understand why, but they have to be really careful because they don't know what the boundaries, or some would say the standards are, of different, Christian groups that come down. So when he found out that I liked rum, he was like, oh man, you've got to try this. So we tried this Zacapa rum, and man, it was good. It was so good that when I got to customs the next morning, at the airport, I think I bought at least 2. It might have been 3 bottles of it. I think it was 2 bottles. It was on, quote, sale, right? You buy 1 for this amount, 2 for, you got the second one and a half off. So I bought 2, and man, I've never been the same. Never been the same. And so, yeah, he's named Zacapa. Not that I don't drink rum every day no, but if I have a choice, if all the options are on the table, money is no object, then I get that kind of rum. Anyways, you have to make sure he's all ready to go. And you can't stop just anywhere anymore, right? We have to make sure we stop where he can go and get a little exercise and relieve himself, and then get back in the truck, and then we'll continue. And All these things I think of when I think of these guys getting ready to go during the day. And they always had to be ready to go because they were all supposed to watch the cloud, watch the pillar, and be ready. When the pillar moves, we move. And I think of quote God, right, leading these people, the pillar. Like you can't move fast if you're in the front of a group of people like this. You can't move fast because there are always stragglers. It doesn't matter how dictatorial you can be. And I trust me, in my lifetime, running youth mission trips and camps and conference centers and events, I was, especially early on, I was incredibly dictatorial when it came to moving people. Oh my goodness, I was famous for this. But it's still, I had to lower my expectations because even despite my incredible pushing, there were those who just didn't seem to get, they just couldn't get it. They just couldn't. You could do all humanly possible to prepare the way so that all they had to do was show up on time. And yet they somehow found a way to straggle. They found, like, they'd get there and be like, oh, wait. I forgot my Nalgene bottle. I forgot. Oh, was I supposed to bring that? Yeah, it's the only thing. Yes, the only thing you were supposed to bring. Like we covered this 17 times last night before you went to bed. Bring this to chapel. And you were like, yes. And I had you repeat it back to me. Like 17 times you repeated it back to me. And you're here at chapel, and what don't you have? I'm really sorry, Bob. I'm really sorry. I forgot. It was so stressful getting here. Stressful? Stressful? What did you have to do besides walk? Anyways, that was my journey. I had to learn to be patient, kind, and loving because that's what Jesus would do. But man, I was mean. I was downright mean to a lot of people because of their lack of ability to move. So I think of that when I think of this pillar leading the people. And then there's always those who you're trying to lead who want to run ahead of you because somehow they think they know where you're going. And that's a whole nother lesson when it comes to God leading people, right? When God starts to lead you, he gives you the next step. But if you project where he's going, you can run way ahead of him and you can even accomplish a lot of things way out there. And then you turn around and you realize I'm exhausted. I don't, my resources have fallen off. I don't feel God's present I don't think God's with me. Like, what's going on, God? And he's like, well, I never wanted to go there. You wanted to go there. I'm here with you, but it's not where I wanted you to go. It's fine. I love you. I'm good. Good things are going to happen. Good stuff happen. But, you missed the opportunity to walk with me because you were so excited to walk ahead of me. And listen, he gets that. There are people that are built that way. And I've been around those people too. I'd be like, while I'm trying to quote lead the group somewhere, it's like, no, come back. Again, mission trips were a great example. There were always a few teens that were 3, 4, 5, not blocks, but like doors ahead of us. It'd be like, no, guys, come on back. No, we're turning here. And then they come running back. Whoa, yeah, but I found this great store. Can I go in this store? No, you can't go in the store because we're here. We're going this direction. Oh man, I really wish we could go to that store. Well, we didn't come here to go shopping. We came here to help people. We're helping people down this street. It's crazy. So anyway, all of this goes through my mind when I think of travel days with 1 million people. I can't imagine the love and kindness of God in all of this. And at some level, I can't imagine what Moses went through because he's constantly moving with the people. And I'm sure a lot of them wanted him to be up front and, Moses will follow you. And Moses is kind of up front, but then there's this group of people that are spreading out, I'll call it like horizontally next to him. And then they kind of arc their way in front of him and they're kind of getting around the cloud. And some of the people are now all of a sudden it's, the cloud is moving, but there's kind of a small group of people in front of the cloud. And then there's like basically a circle. And I'm sure God's up top just kind of chuckling. Because as much as there's people way out front, he's also seeing the stragglers, the ones that are like, I just didn't have time to prepare. I didn't know we were leaving this morning. And well, you're supposed to always be ready to go. Well, I know, but we were just settling in. It was just so nice, and then I had to go to the bathroom, and then I forgot to get the wood, and then I couldn't find the rope, and well, do you put the rope in the same place? Well, I kind of do, but sometimes I forget because I needed it somewhere else, and then we needed water, and we're running low on water, by the way, and then we also need food. Like, I don't know where all the food's gonna. And anyways, I throw all that out there. I know we spent 20 minutes on it, but I throw it all out there because these are the things that I think sometimes get lost because preachers don't have time to go through it because they're only given, I don't know, some of them are only given 18 minutes, 20 seconds because they're on a podcast or a video feed to 12 other sites, and this is all they have, and everything has to be super, ready to go. And then there's others who they do have time. My daughter and son-in-law go to a church down near Dallas, Fort Worth, in the Metroplex there. But man, all it says is their church starts at 10. That's it. And you don't know when it's going to get over. Worship team worships until they're done. Preacher preaches until he's done. And the worship team comes back. And it could be 2:30, 3 o'clock. And I know that there's a lot of urban churches that do that as well. I mean, it's not the church standards that I grew up with. The mega churches, the mega site churches, they are very standard, and they keep it that way. So it takes all kinds to roll through this. So I know but I just know a lot of them don't have time to really give you an opportunity to kind of meditate and imagine what it'd be like when the cloud starts to move and all the people get the message. Clouds moving, clouds moving, pack up, pack up, pack up. Tents have to come down, ropes have to be stored, stakes have to be pulled up, stakes have to be stored, all the rugs, all the carpets, all the canopies, all the room dividers. It was, oh my goodness, I'm really sorry, I sneezed. Wow, that one stuck up on me. It was a massive undertaking to move. It leads into this chapter 16. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin. It's not the sin of badness. Which is between Elim and Sinai on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. So they've been on the road for 2.5 months, basically. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. So I'm sure that this grumbling didn't start with, you've brought us out into the desert to starve this entire assembly to death, right? Because that's what they said. Verse 3, the Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat, ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. I don't think it started there. I don't think it just started, right? They're moving, they're packing things up, they're noticing, man, we're running low on supplies. We're running low on supplies. Are you running low? I'm running too. Do you guys have any flour left? Any meat? Do you have anything left? Any dried vegetables? Any wine, anything at all? Like they're starting to borrow from one another, loan each other things, kind of help you kind of get through. Like you're getting down to the, what do they call it? Like rice and chicken type of thing, or rice and beans, kind of the staple food, grains, easy to find, easy to keep, long-term type of things. I mean, we have some in the RV because we don't know. We have some dehydrated foods. We have some, standard rice and beans that we keep. Because it's like, well, you just don't know. Like you could break down. We could break down. We could be days without help. And that's okay. Like we're prepared for that. But you have to be prepared for that. And I think that they're starting to run into using those sort of rations. I don't think, it's not like Moses didn't have to prepare for himself. He did. And he knew that they were all running low. So they come to, they show up. But the slaves and victims, slave/victim mentality, they tend to escalate things quickly. And it tends to be around being more selfish and being more of a victim. So when they find out that, that their neighbor isn't doing well and needs food, they might loan them something, but then they also think, man, I better start hoarding this. I better start rationing this. I need to take care of me. And what happens to me? What happens when I run out of food? What happens when I have more children than them? I have more flocks than them. I need to take care of me. And this opportunity, see, this is just a circumstance. Circumstances are irrelevant when it comes to your attitude and approach to them. Circumstances do not matter, and they don't matter to God. His goodness is always there. His wisdom is always there. His provision is always there. So it doesn't matter. And this is an opportunity for all of them to come to this, again, this realization, this opportunity for all of them to decide, hey, we're running out of supply, but God. They all have opportunity to look back and testify to themselves, to remind themselves of the testimony of God's provision. They can say, you remember when we were in Egypt and God showed up and he protected us from the plagues? You remember when he said, go ask your masters for gold and silver and see what happens. And when we did, they lavished us with gold and silver and clothing and tents and just all the supplies we could ever need to basically be a nation of supplies came to us just because we asked. And you remember when, and you remember when, and you remember when, and they could talk about the travel days. They could talk about the Red Sea. They could talk about, there was just so many. They could talk about Moriah and the way that throwing a stick in the water caused it all to be sweet, and just God proving to them, hey, there's no need to worry about your water supply. I will, wherever you are, it doesn't take hard work. There's so many ways that they could have approached this circumstance with the goodness of God in mind, but the slavery, victim mentality, the selfishness was so deeply entangled in the way that they viewed their circumstances that when these circumstances arose, they fell into it. I don't blame them. I'm not upset with them. I go through the same thing. When circumstances hit us, it is easy to revert back to our internal perspective rather than a eternal or heavenly perspective. So in verse 3, when it was like, if only we had died at the Lord's hand in Egypt, there we sat around pots of meat and ate food all we wanted, but you have brought us into this desert to starve this entire assembly. In verse 3, what they say basically is, we traded our freedom for food and shelter, and we got it. When we were in Egypt, we traded freedom for food and shelter, and they at least provided that. We worked in exchange for government to provide the basic needs, and we got our basic needs. They provided enough food and shelter for us that we didn't die. And I mean to tell you, right? You and I both know this. There are many governments where that is still true today, where they provide just enough for their people to have food, and just enough food and just enough shelter that they don't die. And they basically say, you should be grateful to us for providing all we do. And at some level, the people are, because they think, well, yeah, because any less and I would die. But at least I'm alive. At least I'm able to eat. At least I have a place to call home. And most governments, their goal is to retain power. And the best way to retain power is to keep people from thinking that they can do anything on their own. If everyone depends on the government for everything that they, quote, need, and all they really need is enough food and shelter to survive, but if they depend on the government for those things, then the government maintains control. They maintain authority. They maintain manipulative power over you. Not only what you do, but how you do it and where you do it and where you live and how you get there. And it just, you can watch it down. Like if you study history at all, you see that that's what happens over and over and over again, all throughout the study of mankind. And God's really trying to set up a different type of government here. He's trying to help them see that the government of heaven is not that type of government. And as circumstance arises, God doesn't cause it. It arises because of life. And he's giving them, like, they have the opportunity. What do you want to do? How do you want to approach this? And they go to Moses and say, hey, our last masters took care of our basic needs. And they're going to Moses and Aaron saying, now you guys are our new masters, and you should at least do the same. You should. Right? Or we should just go back, because at least those masters took care of our basic needs. You're not taking care of the basic needs. You promised us freedom and love and joy and peace. You had all this hope of a new nation taking over another country, running things ourselves, being in control. Finally, being being able to protect and own everything because you owe it all to me. And now we're out here and you can't even provide the basic needs that the last masters provided. We should just go back there. We're going to die anyways. That's another way, that's a nuance of what they're saying here. We're going to die. Some master's going to kill us. But at least if we die in the hands of the masters in Egypt, we would have food and shelter. We would have something to eat and a place to sleep until we died. But out here, we're out here in the desert. We're sleeping in tents and we're running out of food. We run out of water. Like, how are you? What's your plan, Master? What's your plan? How are you going to provide for us? You promised us freedom. Well, who cares if we can't eat? Who cares if we're free and we die in the desert? They escalated this pitch of victimhood until they got to that part. Slaves and victims always tend to communicate poorly because they focus on extreme words. They don't focus on finding solutions. They don't ask questions to bring about solutions. Like listen, they could have looked at their circumstances and maybe they think to themselves, I don't have a solution for this. Let's go to Moses and ask him to talk to God. Like even if they wanted at some level to have communication with the God who seems to always come through for them, they didn't go to Moses with that kind of approach. They went to Moses with accusations of, you're not as good of a master as the last one, and you promised us more. Now, right? How many, quote, democratic governments in the world, right? Everybody's like, you promised us free everything, and you lied. It turns out we have to pay all our money back to you in taxes. It's like, well, it's what I forget. Some philosopher said that, right? The democracies will only last until all the people realize that they can vote themselves. They can vote more money for themselves and less for other people. So basically, the taxes keep going up and up and up until eventually everybody, gives up all their freedom and lets the government provide with their basic needs and control everybody's movement. And they do it in the name of, I'm going to be free. I'm going to be free. And they're the Israelites are no different. They've gone to Moses at some level. They could have went to him and said, listen, we don't know what God's going to do with our problem, but we have a problem. We're running out of food. And we need food to survive. We're out here in the wilderness. Great. We're out here walking step by step, following the cloud. Everything's going good. We get it. We're on a new adventure. We're going to develop a new country with a new government. There's a lot of newness, but you know what, Mo? We're short on food, though. Mo, we're short on food. So could you talk to God and see what he wants to do? But they go to him with that extreme, we're all going to die. This is all your fault. You let us down. And when you communicate poorly, one of the ways you can tell this is your vocabulary kills conversation. Your vocabulary kills any idea of a solution. You basically present things in such a way that everything's going to be ruined, or everything's going to crash, or everyone's going to die. And there's no other way to view this. There's only one way. I mean, I work with people like this, especially currently. And at the time of this recording, I'm working at a liquor store, just stocking shelves and keeping, boxes. I stack boxes and sling bottles all day. But there are many people there who just can't find a positive way to look at anything. Every day they come in, they're sick, they're tired, they're sore. I don't know how they live like this, but every day they do. And that's exactly, it doesn't help. It doesn't bring about good communication. They present things in such a way that it's like conversation's over. Conversation's over. I presented something. This is the way I feel. Bah! No more conversation. This is the way I feel. You hurt me. You offended me. You. I'm the victim. You're the bad guy. Conversation's over. Victims are horrible people to conversate with because they keep derailing conversation. Any relationship that has poor communication will ultimately die because relationships are built on communication. And I've seen that happen in businesses and with workers and bosses. I've seen it happen in churches with preachers who are, as much as they may be good orators, and they can get up front and wow a crowd, they're not good at relationship. They don't communicate well. And so the relationships die all around them. People leave all the time and they don't know why. I don't know why. Because you don't communicate well. But leading people out of this mentality, helping people learn to communicate as not a victim, learn to see themselves as not a slave, is incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult because literally everything they view life through has to be changed. So every circumstance, you have to remind them of how heaven would view that same circumstance. See, if heaven looked at the circumstance of somebody running out of food, it just looks back to heaven. It looks like, well, here's an opportunity for God to come through. Here's an opportunity to be promoted and expanded in my faith and my trust. It's a much easier task to keep people thinking as slaves, to keep them victims, because they'll do what you tell them to do. If you provide what you promise to provide, they'll just do it. Whatever you want, we'll do it. So verse 4 and 5, God comes up with a solution. He's like, listen, I'll rain down bread from heaven for you. The people can go out each day, gather enough food for the day, and in this way, I will test them. I know we'll work on that. We'll test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days. So God brings unconditional, loving solution. Unconditional. He's like, I'm going to rain down bread on top of them every morning. Now, he doesn't say, if they follow my instructions, I will rain down bread. That's not what he says. Now, that's the way a lot of people want to present it. But he's like, listen, we're gonna take this as an opportunity to develop within them a different mentality, a different pattern of life, a pattern of trusting relational connection to their God, not one of a master-slave mentality. I'm going to rain down bread from heaven every single morning. And they are to go out and gather all the bread that they want for the day. And then it'll be at night, it's gone. Throw the rest away. and more will come tomorrow. This pattern is one of God being trusted every day. This is one of God being abundant every day. This is once, that word test really means prove, right? They're going to prove to themselves that they listen and hear from God. They're going to prove to themselves that I listen and hear from them, that we are in a relationship that goes hand in hand, that I am not way up high, unapproachable, and I'm, only talk to me through Moses. I want them to touch and feel my goodness every single day. I want them to taste it. They say that this bread tastes like honey, sweet bread. It had to be spectacular, melt in your mouth, spectacular bread every morning. God's heart is not to make them slaves, but to make them free. And this is a key concept when you're when in the interpretation and translation of these scriptures, right? God's rules are never to enslave. It's never a test of you better pass the test with an A or you failed. Like there's no second place in heaven. It's only first place. And if you don't come in first, you're last. Famous Ricky Bobby quote, right? God gives an opportunity to choose a path that brings more life, more freedom, more hope, more joy. That's the path that he offers, but it's still your choice on how you're going to perceive it. The people that walk out every morning could perceive the goodness of God raining down on them, unconditional love of God raining down on them, unconditional goodness of God raining down on them, that every day their God wanted to interact with them. He wanted them he wanted to be touched. He wanted to be tasted. He wanted to see that all of this is good. Or you can come out every morning and go, I better gather just enough. I don't want to gather too much. I want to gather just enough that I need, because I don't want God to be displeased, because if he is, then there'll be no food tomorrow. It's fascinating to me. This manna from heaven, this stayed with them for years. Every morning, God was faithful. Every morning, there was food to eat. It's a fascinating concept. And here we're introduced to it. Now, I know we didn't get far, did we? But I hope you got a picture of travel days. I hope you got a good picture of working yourself out of a slave mentality. We all probably have roots of victimization and slavery that goes into our brain, and it's just the way we were taught, or the way that we were taught about God or about parents or about ourselves, and we're just trying to keep everybody happy. That's a slave mentality. So I hope maybe you can examine yourself and start to untangle yourself from even deeper places where maybe that's taken place. And I hope you guys have a fabulous day, and I look forward to seeing you again next week on The Epic Narrative.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
Here are my thoughts. I listened to that episode and I thought, what a tangled bunch of, well, I don't know. I know I had some coherent thoughts, but if I had to summarize it, I think what I was trying to say was a victim mentality will always find excuses to be a victim. And when you're coming out of, in essence, a slavery mindset, whatever you're a slave to untangle from that mindset is very difficult, because the mind is used to it. It goes back to it. It simply wants to connect back to something that seems familiar. And the Israelites are out there and they're saying, this is unfamiliar. Things are unsure. We don't know really where we're going because we follow the cloud. We don't know how we're going to survive because we don't have the resources that we used to have. Even though it cost us our freedom, we had better supplies back in Egypt. So let's go back there. Why did you bring us out here? And that kind of mentality is hard to untangle from. It's hard if you're not willing to do the work, if you want somebody else to do the work for you. And I think some of that, again, is that victim mentality. Somebody has to take care of me. And governments take advantage of that. Leaders of all sorts, whether it's in business or church or nonprofits of any kind, leaders take advantage of the idea that you will defer to them if they promise to take care of you, even if they continually fail at that promise. It's more comfortable for you to blame them than it is for you to say, all right, I'm gonna make my way out of this. And that's really what the challenge is, but for the Israelites. But it's not, it's not on an individual scale. It's on a massive scale of 1 million plus people. Wow, I don't know why I made that all into such an incredibly long episode when I could have just said it like that. Oh, good golly, Miss Molly. All right. Well, I appreciate, as always, you guys hanging out with us. At the time of the recording of this Bob Thoughts, I am in the middle of looking for a job. Got a couple leads, hoping to get it done. Obviously not long-term jobs. Where we are currently staying is not... We're at a winter rental at a summer destination, so it's cheap. We gave up the RV. I think I've said that before. Not gave it up for good, but we put it up for storage, stored it for the winter, and we're hanging out near family, getting to know them, and just enjoying the opportunity to be around them. So yeah, hopefully, by the time you hear this, I will have at least one, if not two, kind of part-time jobs, and we will keep you updated. We will keep you updated. And if you're listening to this years from now, just know that when you wander, as my wife and I have been doing now for almost 2 years, there are things that that don't make sense. And in doing that, even though you know inherently that you're following the Lord, like the Israelites did when they were looking at the pillar, they knew God was there. He was for them, not against them, etc. But there's things you do that doesn't make sense. Like it just doesn't. You want to kind of plug back into the matrix. You want to plug back into what's comfortable. But you also truly believe that God will come through for you because you've seen him come through for you. And that's what we're doing. And we hope someday to land so the wandering is done. But at some level, in doing these recordings and in listening to them again, it's like, wow, yep, I kind of relate. As I'm sure a lot of you do as well. So I hope you continue to enjoy the episodes, and I look forward to talking to you again next week on the Bob Thoughts After the Epic Narrative.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.